this finger out of my hole. I've been walking the road too damn long. I'm a crippled and a riddle with doubt. I need to get the finger out.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Get the Finger Out podcast. It's me, Darryl, your host, and we're here again for episode 2. I hope you enjoyed episode 1. If you haven't listened to episode 1, you should probably listen to it first to hear what I'm all about. The last episode I basically just gave just an overview of my life and why I'm doing the podcast and everything, and yeah, just a general overview. This podcast I'm going to talk a little bit. I need a little notepad this time to know what the fuck's going on, but yeah, sorry for cursing as well if anybody doesn't like cursing, but at the same time it's my podcast, so fuck it. So this podcast I'm going to talk a little bit about self-esteem, building self-esteem. I'm going to talk about building side hustles and businesses and stuff, and I might talk a little bit about hypnotherapy, and yeah, I'll just see where it goes. I might end up not talking about any of that stuff, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I done a podcast. I actually done the podcast yesterday, and I was going to wait a week, but I just feel there's so much in my mind that if I don't get it out now, I might forget it. I mean, I said yesterday that I'd done the first podcast 3 times, and I said so much in those first podcasts, but I didn't record the sound properly. I've made a bit of a muck up there, and there's no way of just trying to remember everything at once. I will say I'm not really going to talk too much about alcohol because I talked about that a lot in the last podcast, but I will in the first 6 episodes definitely do an episode completely all about alcohol and bit of more of my story and my views, and talk a little about AA and rehab and things that might be of use or interest to anybody that feels they have a bit of an issue. But I will just say this before I go on: if anybody has an issue with addiction, like drinking or drugs or gambling or whatever, and you're too afraid to maybe go to a doctor or go to an AA meeting or an NA meeting or anything like that, don't be afraid to pop me over a message. I'll be completely confidential and never mention anybody's names on the podcast or anything like that there. And if I do want to share any information that you give me, I'll say it anonymously, and I'll also ask your permission. Yeah, so moving on. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is resistance, and it can be anything from resistance to getting out of bed in the morning, to resistance to starting a new business idea, doing things. We all have things that we always wanted to do in life and we never really got round to it. And for me, I've got about 1,000 things, and as I said before, I'm very good at starting the thing. In fact, I'm very good at writing down a complete overview of what I'm going to do. So for example, I wanted to start a business doing something. I've got about 1,000. I'll take over COVID I started a little small hot tubs side hustle. I only had 2 hot tubs and I just rented them to people to make money. So within that, you know, my mind goes to, I want to take over the world and be the biggest hot tub man in the world, sort of thing. Well, not in the world, but in Ireland. Because I saw that, you know, a hot tub would cost me between £600 to £800, and you rent it out for around 100 and something. And then once you take your costs out of it, like diesel and stuff like that there, you know, you're left with £100 profit, and 2 hot tubs, renting them out twice a week, it can make you up to £400 a week. So then my head says, right, well, if I have 10 hot tubs, then that could be £2,000 a week, you know. And then I would obviously need to hire people to do the business with me. So you pay people, say you pay 2 different people, £300-400 a week each, you're still taking home £1,000 passive income. So like, and then I'm like, oh, what if I have 100 tubs, and scale that up and, do all of Ireland and everything. And some people do that. There's maybe 2 or 3 businesses that I've seen along the while, and fair play to them. They must be loving it. But for me, yes, that's the point. So I would write all this down on a piece of paper, do all the mathematics, and then I'd almost get a high out of, looking at the money at the end. I'd say I've got 30 hot tubs and I'm making so many thousand a week, and I have this big business and only have to work, say, 15 hours a week managing the business. And I'll write that all down on paper. I'll write down what I need to do on social media, what marketing strategies I need, all the things I can think of, and then I'll write that all down, and then I'll call 2 or 3 best friends and I'll tell them all about it. I'll talk to my dad about it, I'll talk to my mum about it, my partner about it, and I'll get this rush, this like dopamine rush in my head. Dopamine's like a chemical in your brain that makes you fucking happy or some shit. By the way, anything I say, it might be wrong or whatever. It's from what I've learnt and it's what I know. It's my opinion. If you feel like correcting me, go ahead, But if I start trying to stall too much, trying to figure out if what I'm saying is right or wrong, then I'll never say something that's too wrong. I think dopamine's a neurotransmitter or some shit, but it makes you happy, and it's the thing that it's something to do with getting a good feeling whenever, it can be related to drugs and alcohol and stuff as well. But I would get the dopamine surge. So the dopamine, basically, you would get that hit if you're on the way to the pub and you're looking forward to going out, and the feeling you get before you go, or before you go on a holiday or anything like that, the feeling you get before you go, it's almost as good as actually being there, So I would get the good feeling about starting the business and making loads of money and feeling great about it, and then I tell everybody, and through telling people, I would get a buzz about it as well. And then once it comes round to actually doing the work and actually doing something, I either stall and I say I'll do it next week, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next week. And for me personally, I'd usually get drunk or something and self-sabotage, and then I'm in a position where I don't have any expendable cash to actually start the business. I'd just be in a position where I'm trying to recuperate my losses from drinking and pay back people I've maybe borrowed money from and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm talking about resistance. Resistance is it's that little voice in your head that tells you to wait till tomorrow. It tells you not to get out of bed. It tells you it's maybe not going to work. Like a big resistance I have for this podcast is listening back to myself and then saying, oh shit, what was I talking about there? Oh, I sound stupid. Oh fuck, nobody's going to want to listen to that, blah blah blah. But it might be true that nobody wants to listen to me. I could be talking to myself right now and about 10 best friends will listen to it, and that's it. And that could happen, and if it does, whatever. At least I know I tried and I failed and I learned from the failure, and if I ever want to do a podcast again, I can learn from my mistakes. But another thing is, if you're doing anything, you should feel passionate about it. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, I'll talk about that later. Resistance. So I read this little book. It's called not the Art of War, it's called the War of Art. And it seems like it's geared towards musicians and artists, but it's also geared towards anybody that's looking to do anything that's out of their comfort zone. And I talked a little yesterday, I think, about how, when we're younger, you might be in the classroom and you're a child, you're 5 years old, and you do a drawing, and the drawing is cool and the teacher says that's very good, and you bring it home to mummy, daddy, whatever, and they're like, oh, that's amazing, and that fills you with self-esteem. I don't know what the psychology of it is, with validation from other people and stuff, but I think you do need to get validation from other people when you're a child. I think that's what nurturing a child is, you know. But if you're in school and say your teacher tells you that drawing's good, and then there's a guy next to you or a girl next to you, and he or she says, that's shit, that's a shit drawing, you're shit, that's a shit drawing, you know, something small like that, that will traumatize you, can traumatize you, not everybody, and that can make you feel, well, first and foremost, it make you feel shit, and we tend to, as humans, as part of the human condition, I think, remember negative things people say about us in lieu of a positive stuff, you know. And you take the negative thing that the person says and you internalize it. You can internalize it. I'm speaking about me and from what I've read about lots of other people, but I'm not saying this is everyone, but we can internalize what that person says at a very young age, and then we will grow like a layer of protection around our true selves. You know, when you're a child, when you're a blank slate and you're just a child, you don't care, you just do anything, you know, you're a free bird, you know. And you know, that's kind of my goal today as well, is to get back to not being a child. Obviously I want to be an adult and mature and emotionally intelligent, but we do want to go back to being our authentic selves, you know. That's I guess the key to true happiness, you know, from what I've learned anyway. So as the child, you internalize that, you create a protective layer around yourself, and then, you know, you repress that. And you know, we can't remember all the time somebody said something bad to us when we were a child. Some things we do remember, but the memory's just not big enough to remember everything. So we repress that, and we just create a defense mechanism that basically says, don't try anything, don't try something new. And this is so true for lots of people. It's definitely true for myself. So then later in life, when I become a musician, you know, I didn't have a problem playing with a band, because I always had strength in numbers. So if you make a song with a band, you're able to talk with everybody in the band and be like, oh, we love this song's fucking great, let's get it out there, let's do it, you know. But if it comes to, for me, writing a song by myself, like I've written fucking well, I'm the king of not finishing things, so I would say I have hundreds of unfinished songs. I've probably got about 30 finished songs, but you know, I've spilt wine on various computers and lost many of them as well, and a lot of them are shit, you know, let's not beat around the bush, but it's good to have them there. Sorry, I go on a lot of tangents. So that protective layer, it stops you from doing things later in life, and it creates a thing which this book that I read calls resistance. And we have to, if we want to do things, we have to rise above the resistance. And you know, a lot of us have low self-esteem and we don't even know it. I certainly didn't know that I had low self-esteem until about four or 5 years ago. I didn't even know what self-esteem was, to be honest, until, actually, what am I on about, 4 or 5 years ago? COVID has my mind fucked. It was probably 10 years ago. I went to a counsellor for the first time, and I talked to her. She was one of these counsellors that you go for, when you go the first time, you just pay for the hour, but she'll talk to you. I think we talked for about 3 hours or something, and she just listened to me talk, basically. And at the end, she basically said, well, do you know that you have low self-esteem? You know, what does that sound like to you, sort of thing? And I was like, what's self-esteem? And then she explained it, and I was like, oh shit, that makes so much sense. So resistance can form because of low self-esteem as well, and it can also just be like these tiny little things that happened when we were younger that make us afraid to go for things, or maybe it's just within your personality nature to not go for things or try things. But at the end of the day, if you don't try, you don't know, and you live your whole life going, what if, you know? And I've done that plenty of times, so many times, hundreds of times, every fucking month nearly. But it's a good cup of tea. Also, I've decided, if you're watching and you're not listening, I've decided I'm going to wear a colourful sweater every podcast and try to keep it up, just having a different colourful sweater. But that's a side point. Resistance wise, so I have resistance for this podcast. I am on episode 2 now. I've said I'm going to do 6 episodes and then I'm going to put it out. But I am not going to show this podcast to family, friends, partner, anybody. Not even myself. I'm not even going to listen to myself back. I know what I said in the moment of saying it. I'm talking right now as if I'm talking to anybody, you know? And you know, that'll also become easier as time goes on, because at the minute I've got a microphone, a camera, I've got lights over here. You know, it is hard at the start, but it'll come. And yeah, so that resistance, you know, as a songwriter, I always found it hard. I never put out music. I've written all those songs. I think I've only put out like 2 songs. In fact, as of recently, I realised the only song I have on Spotify, my name as a musician as well is Buskerman, if you want to check it out. Little plug there. It's Buskerman, Buskerman. But anyway, I done this reality TV show, a really, really cheesy TV show, and we wrote a song for it about the County Tyrone that we live in. And it's completely different from any type of music I would ever write. In fact, my dad basically wrote most of the song, and it's a cheesy country song. I'm into, like, you know, alternative rock, indie, electronic, different stuff, you know, whereas this is like the cheesiest song. I can't even sing it properly, but we recorded it, and I realised the other day, if I die and I don't have kids, but if anybody, friends or whatever, ever wanted to remember me and say, put on a song by Darryl just to remember him, you know, I just have this image in my head of like 2 friends getting drunk 10 years after my death going, do you remember Darryl? Darryl was a good lad. What was the song that he done? And then putting it on Spotify, and it's fucking, oh god. So that's something I want to do over the next year, is get some music out there as well. I'm not doing music for the idea of trying to take over the world or be a really good musician or whatever, just to have something there that I can be remembered by, hopefully, you know. It's really fucked up being a musician when you're young. Like, a lot of us, obviously not speaking for everybody, when you're growing up, you know, for me, it's very different now, because ever since Ed Sheeran, there's a lot of kids that just have an acoustic guitar and sing. But back in my day, it was all about having a band, a drummer, a bassist, a lead guitarist, and a rhythm guitarist. And, you know, we're all trying to be like our best friends. In the town I grew up in, there was a band that were exactly like Guns N' Roses. There was a band that were exactly like you know, Muse. There was a band that were my band were trying to be like the Chili Peppers. It was great fun and all the rest. But you know, in my head, I don't know how it was for everybody else, but I imagine it is the same for a lot of people. You want to be a rock star. You want to be fucking the next Jimi Hendrix or whatever, and I certainly did, you know, and you think you do get that buzz when you're on a stage, whether there's 5 people there or 500 people there. It's the greatest buzz ever if everything's going well and things aren't going to shit. I'll probably do a podcast on music and stuff, from what I've learnt from music, another time, but today I'm talking about resistance. And yeah, so as an artist, being a single artist and writing songs, you listen to it, you hear your voice doing something weird, and you're like, oh no, I can't put that out. I'll redo it another time, and then it lies there, and you never come back to it, and then you spill a glass of wine on your Mac and it's gone forever. That's what happened to me. But on the podcast, as I said, I listen to it, I'd be like, what are you talking about, Darrell? Fuck's sake, listen to your voice. You sound stupid, you look stupid, look at your hair. So as I said yesterday, I'm just not giving a fuck, man. I am not giving one fuck about what I think anybody thinks of me. I am passionate about doing this podcast, and I want to do it, and I'm going to do it. And if anybody says you shouldn't have said that, or you shouldn't have said that on the podcast, you know, I'll just be like, shut up. Don't try to change what I want to do. Of course, if someone gives me constructive criticism and says maybe you should structure your podcast like this and maybe it would work better for you or something, then I'll listen, you know. But if somebody's saying you shouldn't say that in your podcast, or shouldn't, fuck off, you know. Couldn't be bothered. I've spent my whole life worrying about what people think of me and what people think I should do and what society tells me I should do. And from now on, I'm on a journey to try and find out who the real me is, you know, who my authentic self is. And that sort of brings me on to the next thing I was going to talk about, which is self-esteem. And, you know, I've made 4 points. There's lots of different ways to build self-esteem. One of the things I learned in AA as well, which is part of sort of the program. I've only started the program. I'm only doing step 2. For anybody that's unaware about Alcoholics Anonymous, it's like a 12-step program, it's called. And, you know, you can go to all these meetings and talk and listen, and it's great. It's really helpful. It's free therapy. It's absolutely free, you know. You can donate at the end if you want. But you know, most people that are there sober a long time all say, you know, you need to do this program. And I never done the program, the 12-step program. I just spent, I've been going to it for about 12 years on and off, and I never done the program. So this time I'm actually doing the program, and if it fails, well, fuck it, at least I tried it. And maybe the next podcast will be in New Zealand, and I'll be drunk on a beach somewhere talking about something completely different. But hopefully that doesn't happen, because I don't want to die. But what was I talking about? See, my story always ventures off into alcohol somewhere. That's how a big part of my life it is. Self-esteem. So yeah, I was going on TikTok and reading different things and ideas for building self-esteem, and these are ones that stuck with me mostly. Oh, so the one out of AA, is helping other people. So whether that's giving somebody a lift somewhere if you have a car and they don't, or helping somebody out, whether it's small or big, you know, even, you know, petting your animals and playing with your dog a bit more than you used to. I know I've only a dog, she's only 9 months, she's over there, I'll get her on the podcast someday. And you know, you can be having a bad day and it's easy to walk into the house and she's excited to see you and you're just like, oh well pup, and then you just walk off. And that's like, apart from going for a walk and getting fed, that's the highlight of her day. So, you know, if you just spend 5 minutes rubbing your puppy's belly and playing with her, you know, it makes you feel good inside, and I think that helps me build a little bit of self-esteem. I don't think any one of these things give you self-esteem, and I don't think self-esteem just happens like overnight, you know. It's just getting in a routine of doing things that make you feel good about yourself and value yourself and like yourself and love yourself. Another one that I've started doing naturally actually now in a very small scale, but it's called just having a routine in the mornings. A morning routine that you do every morning that just gets you into like shape to go attack your day and do your shit. And me being one of these people that tries to take over the world in one go, I would sit there and, as I said earlier, writing things down. I would write down the ultimate morning routine, and I would be researching the best morning routines of the most successful people on the internet, and I'd write it all down on a jotter. And I'd be like, right, tomorrow morning I'll wake up, and for the first hour and a half of my day, wake up, pint of water, brush teeth, eat some fruit, go for a jog, work out, have an ice bath, get in a sauna, pray, meditate, read a book, plan your day, blah blah blah, all these things that are meant to be best for you. But the truth is, I've tried many different routines, and the thing is, I don't fucking want to do these things, and everything, there's no exacts. Everybody's different, everybody's individual, and there's no exact thing that suits every person, and I'd be waking up going, oh fuck, I gotta get up, I gotta read, I'm too fucking tired, it's shit, and then I don't do it the next day, and then I feel like a failure, and then that lowers my self-esteem, and then I just become a slob and lie in bed, make breakfast about 4 hours after getting up, and say, I'll watch another episode of Line of Duty, another episode of The Sopranos, another episode of The Wire, which are all TV shows I've watched before, and I'm rewatching them because they are really, really great. But wasting your day just watching hour after hour of shit on a screen it's not good for your self-esteem either. For me anyway. I love tea. So naturally, this past 2 weeks since getting sober this time, I've got a sponsor now in AA, which is something that you're told to do, which I never really done properly in the past. And I've been walking the dog with my sponsor, which is great. So also my partner, I drive her to work. So basically I wake up, my routine is waking up, I have a cup of tea in bed, and I play a game of chess. I've got very into chess since when I went to rehab a year ago. I learned how to play chess properly, and it's the most addictive game once you get into it. And I don't feel bad being addicted to it. Well, sometimes if I spend like more than an hour a day playing it, but half an hour a day playing chess, I feel like it's really good for your mind. It's one of these addictive things that's good for you, kind of like exercise, but it is, even though it's engaging your strategic mathematical brain or whatever, it's also a form of escapism, just like Xbox, Netflix, porn, whatever, so so basically I wake up, I have a cup of tea, I wake up at say 7:30, 20 to 8, I have a cup of tea and I play a game of chess, and then I drive my girl to work. And then depending on whether I'm going for a walk at 9 or 10, I'll come home, have a shower, have breakfast if there's time. If not, I'll go walk the dog. That gets the dog walked for the day. I talk to my sponsor, which keeps me sane, and I feel like I'm progressing within the program of AA as well by talking to him, and it just sets me up for the day when I come home. I've just come home from doing it there now. It's 12 o'clock in the day now. I did stall a little bit today, but I feel great. I feel like my brain's awake, from going for the walk and stuff. I think I said yesterday that I'm going to start drinking 2 litres of water a day, and I need to actually being more conscious about that, because I'm drinking fucking cups of tea and coffee flat out, and I do love tea and coffee, but it does dehydrate you. But so I do need to make my promise to that, but I said I'm giving myself a week to get on track with it. And I'm starting to do gigs. It's Easter now, so I'm doing gigs Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So I do tend to drink, 2 or 3 litres of water anyway when I'm gigging. So it's just a case of Monday morning saying to myself, right, 1 cup of tea, then drink the water, and then you can have as much tea as you want. So morning routine, and that kind of leads me on to the next point of something. I read a book called Atomic Habits, I think it's called, and part of that book, it talks about habit stacking, and this links into morning routine, because when if part of your morning routine, if the first thing you do, you've heard it before probably, is make your bed, and I actually haven't been doing that, so I need to get that sorted as well. But I needed to press the space bar on my computer in case the fucking vocals don't record again. That would be terrible. That creates resistance as well for me. Those first 2 podcasts that I done that didn't record properly, I was like, maybe this is God telling me I shouldn't do it, but I'm glad I done it, and I done it yesterday, and now today I'm feeling like I feel like I could do another podcast straight after this, but I don't want to run out of things to say, so I'll just keep it I'll keep it today, and then I might do another one on Sunday or Monday. But either way, you'll have 6 episodes straight away, and then the podcast will be out every Wednesday, as I said. Excuse me, I need a burp. I think I threw up in my mouth there and swallowed it again. What the fuck? Sorry. Yeah, so habit stacking, it talks about it in the book. It talks about habit feedback loops, I think they call it, and it talks about negative feedback loops and positive feedback loops. And negative feedback loops, we all have them. They're basically bad habits, but they're bad habits stacked on top of other bad habits. So one of the main ones that probably a large percentage of people have is, the social media one, which is you're sitting at work and you're doing whatever you do at work, and then you say, oh, this is stressful, maybe I'll just check my Facebook. And then you check your Facebook, and that's your first bad habit. But as soon as you finish checking Facebook and you've read your messages or checked your notifications, then you go, well, sure, I'll check my Instagram, or I'll check my Snapchat, or I'll check my Twitter. And you can get in a little habit of just going through these motions in a little loop, where you go from your Facebook to your Twitter, you check your emails, and then you say, I'll go to the toilet because you need a pee, and then I'll make another cup of coffee, and then you sit at the computer, you do 5 minutes of work, and you get annoyed again, and then you check your Facebook again, and then that's why it's called a feedback loop. It just happens round and round in a circle. So I'm not going to talk about breaking those because I haven't read the book in so long, but I just really remembered the creating positive feedback loops, and it really struck a chord with me. When I was talking about the morning routine, if you're trying to get yourself into like a routine that might be hard at the start to do all the things, like the one I mentioned earlier, of course I don't think you need to do this, but some people do want to just be fully productive and do all the right things. But the way to do it is, baby steps. You start small. So if you want to go for a jog and you tell yourself you want to jog every day, don't start by saying, I'm going to jog for an hour every day or half an hour every day or whatever, and then eat breakfast and then do this and then do that. Just say to yourself, I'm going to jog, even if it involves putting on your jogging clothes the first day and warming up, stretching. And then the next day you do the same thing, and then the next day you do the same thing and you jog for 3 minutes, even round your house or up and down the stairs. As long as you're doing it every day, it takes, I can't remember how long it takes, but say it's 30 days or 60 days of doing something over and over again for it to become a habit in your brain, for it to stick in your subconscious as something you do without even thinking you need to do it. You switch into autopilot. You wake up, you have your cup of tea, as soon as you finish it, you just put your jogging bottoms on and away you go. Of course I haven't mastered this yet, I'm very good at dishing out advice and not following my own, but anyway, so that's something I'm going to start doing with the drinking water. I guess it'll start with making my bed. I'll tell you what, my next thing for the next podcast, and this is funny because if my partner listens to this, I'll be getting shouted at if I don't follow through with what I say I'm going to do. But so I'm going to be drinking water every day and making the bed every day, and that's all I have to do apart from doing the podcast. And if anybody is following me in this journey, if you're a big as bum as me and you want to, try and self-actualize, then copy me, do what I'm doing, drink enough water and make your bed in the morning before the next podcast, and do it every day. And I hope that by episode 50 of this podcast, I think I'll do 100 episodes before I decide whether to keep doing it or not. I'd say if nobody's listening after 100 episodes, then there probably isn't a point in doing it anymore. But who knows? Anyways, I'm not that worried. All I care about is the fact that I'm doing it, and I'm feeling good within myself for making myself do it, and that's all that matters. So the next thing is for building self-esteem. So the habit stacking, you do the habits, and once you start doing them every day, then you'll start to feel better about yourself, And I've been there before where I've got in a great place. My biggest problem is getting to a good place and then self-sabotaging. And that's shit that I need to talk out with my counsellor and stuff, and I'll try to figure it out on the podcast as well. Like, what is the little voice within me that says you must explode everything, your life's going too well now and you need to just explode and just fuck it all up, which is what I've done my entire life, but not feeling bad about it, not feeling sorry for myself. Fuck that, life's too short. I'm here to make a difference in myself and hopefully influence anybody else who feels the same to try and make a difference. So, stuff that interests you. This is something that I didn't do in the past because I'm always was always thinking about making money. I was like, what's the point in starting to do art if I'm never going to be a big artist or sell art? Or what's the point in learning how to run if I don't want to be a professional runner and I don't want to? Or what's the point in learning about, psychology? Or what's the point in learning about, well, I learned about psychology a lot because I wanted to just try and figure out my own fucking brain. But history, say, archaeology, dinosaurs, why should I go and research and buy books about that there if I'm not going to become an archaeologist, or I'm not going to, do something with that information? But that's a load of balls. Stuff that interests you, you should just learn about it. It makes you, it's incredible. I never thought I liked history, growing up. I didn't like history at school. Of course in history class in school all we learned was about, the Brits and Irish people fighting and World War II, and I think there was something else, but I never liked it growing up. I wasn't interested in it. I wasn't interested in geography. I wasn't interested in, religion. I'm still not really interested in religion, to be fair, but stuff like geography, learning about like the earth and, volcanoes and like all that stuff is just mad interesting. I find that stuff fascinating. History I find amazing. I've started listening to a lot of documentaries just talking me through all the history stuff that I know nothing about. Obviously the world wars are mad interesting, but even before that, I'm watching a documentary at the moment on BBC iPlayer. It's called Trauma Zone 1965 to 1999, I think it's called, and it's about Russia, but it's not done like a traditional podcast. It's basically, there's no narrator talking to you, it's just all text, but it's mainly showing you, it's giving you a feel of what if it was like to be in like Russia and Afghanistan and all these countries, all the things that were happening around there, Chernobyl and stuff, through images, moving images, like videos, and it's loads of like footage from back then, and it's unbelievable. It's great. It's like you're learning without even reading. You don't even need the text there. You're sort of getting what's going on. You just need the text to sort of put you in the right direction. But anyway, my point is, like, learning about stuff that interests you is for me a great way of building self-esteem, because I just feel that little bit more valuable and important. And of course this information may never benefit anything I ever do in life, but it's like a sense of entertainment. Maybe this is just me getting old, I don't know a fuck. I just thought all this stuff was stupid in my early 20s. All that mattered was music and making money and partying for me in my early 20s. So doing that stuff. A big one for me is, well, psychology being one. I did go back to school to study counselling, and I also studied hypnotherapy, and I find that stuff fascinating, even if I never do anything with that. You know, of course I'm learning it. I was doing those courses because I wanted to be a counsellor, I wanted to be a hypnotist. I also wanted to figure myself out. But even if I never use that stuff, I just love it. I love learning all about the brain and, you know, the subconscious and why humans are, like, why humans do the things they do. It's fascinating. I think most people are interested in that. But yeah, so stuff that interests you. For me, a big one, when I was younger, my dream, my goal in life was to be a successful musician. Like, I mean, like, as big as Ed Sheeran or the Chili Peppers or whatever, you know, that was my goal. And, you know, there's many people still my age still hanging on to that dream and going for it, and fair play to them, you know. And it's not all about money, you know, which is what I realised as well. Well, now, because I'm a little older, I'm 34 now, I'm thinking more about getting older, and I just don't think that going down the route, for me personally, at this age, pursuing a 10-year plan in being a solo artist or being in a band is going to benefit me in the long term. You know, I've basically given up on that sort of dream, you know. But for a lot of people, they still have that dream, and that's great. And I listen to some of those people's music, you know. I love listening to people from Ireland especially that create music. And, you know, those people, if they get on to good stages and stuff, you know, they're living the dream as well. They may be broke, they may be sleeping on couches and sleeping on buses and stuff like that, but they're playing in front of loads of people, and that is one of the greatest feelings ever about creating music and playing music live, and that's one of my favourite things about it anyway. But for me, I gave up on that a long time ago, but only consciously in the last like couple of years. Really gave up and realised I was still interested in music, you know. I still love music. In fact, I went and done a music course there recently, which I dropped out of because I'm the king of failure. But no, I dropped out of the course because I thought it just wasn't I sort of knew a lot of what I was being taught in the course, and the stuff that I didn't know was stuff that didn't interest me too much, and I had to do essays and stuff, and it was building up with too much pressure, and then I'd get drunk and that would add to the pressure, and my mental health was just going and I just said, you know what, I'm going to drop out of this course. So I did. But anyway, I'm still interested in music. I've got programs on my computer, I've bought this sweet microphone, so I'm going to still create music, and I'm going to put music out there, and I don't really care if too many people listen to it or not. It's just mainly for me, you know, as a way to express myself, as a way to experiment, and a way eventually to build self-esteem, you know. And one thing about that, about my idea of what I want to do with music now, is it's going to build my self-esteem, because whenever you're trying to be somebody with your music and stuff, and you're putting it out there, and you don't get as much attention as you thought you would, you don't get as many likes on Facebook, or you don't get as many shares or listens or whatever, you know, that's the new age way of the new age method of seeking validation from other people, you know. Like I mentioned before, you know, I grew up, it's part of my trauma response, or whatever you want to call it, is always seeking approval from other people, always saying to other people, or trying to be funny in front of other people, or act interesting or whatever, so that people will like me, and therefore I feel good about myself because other people validate me, you know. And that's exactly what happens on social media. Anything from people posting photos, you know, people putting filters in photos to make themselves better looking so they'll get more likes, and more, you know, I'll not just say more boys fancy girls, but more girls fancy boys, because this happens with boys as well, it's not just women. And you know, the same with music, you know, like I could put out a song and it'll get 10 likes, you know, and then some other person put out a song and it gets 100 likes, or I put out a song and it gets 50 views, somebody else puts out a song and gets 50,000 views, and I'm just like, oh, so they're really good and I'm really shit, so therefore I should not make music because I am shit at music. And that's what I internalize, and that's happened so much in my life, you know. So not doing that anymore, not so that brings me to my next point of self-esteem, and that's not giving a fuck. And that's my main thing I got going for me at the minute. I don't give a fuck anymore. I really don't. Life's too short to give one fuck. I'm sorry for cursing so much, but I feel it's the only word that carries as much energy to explain what I'm trying to say. But I just don't give one fuck anymore, you know. I'm sick and tired of doing what I think other people think I should be doing, if that makes sense. And that is, for me, the key to the start of building my self-esteem. Because as soon as I start judging myself or trying to read other people's minds of what they think of me, or validating or judging myself due to the amount of likes I get on a fucking Facebook post or whatever, that's whenever I just start saying, oh well, I'm shit, I shouldn't do that, I'll maybe do it next week when I've got better self-esteem or whatever. And do you know what, maybe tonight I'll just take a drink and all that pain will go away, and maybe I can just have 6 beers. But 6 beers wouldn't be enough, maybe I'll get 12. And you know what, drinking beer gets you drunk really slow, so maybe I'll get a bottle of wine. And what happens if I start running out of alcohol? I'll buy a few baby bottles of whiskey and hide them around my house, and that's how it all starts for me. But yeah, I'm trying real hard not to talk about alcohol in this podcast too much, because as I said, I don't want to be I'd like it a podcast to be, you know, 40%, 30 to 40% talking about alcohol, and then the rest talking about mental health and, you know, myself, my own experiences, goals, motivation, blah 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 blah. Who knows? It could be a full-blown alcohol podcast by episode 10, and if it is, that's okay. Fuck it. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about, it's 47 minutes, right? Maybe I'll leave that to the next podcast. Yeah, the next podcast I'm going to talk about building side hustles and businesses. So when I came back from Liverpool when I was about 21, 22, I started a small little business. So it's just a little small business that made the same amount of money as somebody working a minimum wage job, but doing a lot less hours, working like 10 hours instead of 40 hours. And I've done many of those throughout the years, you know, just little tiny ways of making a bit of money on the side. And many of those side hustles, once you try them out, you're making money. All you have to do is just scale them up. And, you know, if you can't handle managing the whole thing, employ somebody to do it for you. And that's all I ever needed to do in lots of businesses. And yes, a lot of them would have failed. I think they say something like 70% of businesses or something fail in their first 2 years. I could be wrong. Or maybe it's that they don't break even for the first 2 years, as in make, you know, profit. But I am on a journey as well as building my self-esteem, my mental health, my sobriety. I'm also would like to start some side hustles and talk about them in the podcast as well. So that's another aspect of the podcast that I'd like to start doing. I'll do that in the next episode. I'll talk a bit about that. I'll talk about, you know, anybody that's thinking about doing it. You know, it's about getting up off your ass and just trying it. And the main thing, again, that holds us back is resistance. It'll not work. I don't want to take the risk. I feel more secure in a job, you know, but many of these things you can do on top of a job until, you know, say one day it actually starts making you more money than your job, and then you can quit your job if you don't like your job, you know. But I would say there's many people don't like their jobs. For me, if I had to go back and do a job, so that was it. So basically, when I came back from Liverpool and done that, I made a deal with myself that I would never work for the man again, as in I would never work for a boss. You know, I'd always be self-employed, because I was young and full of energy, and I still am young. What the fuck am I talking about? I'm talking like a 40 or 50, 60 year old man. Yeah, I just realised it is pretty easy. You just have to be a tiny bit creative and mainly just do it in order to make a bit of money on the side. And it's really not that hard in this day and age with all the, like, yes, a lot of markets are saturated with the internet and so many businesses, but there's always something that you can do. I mean, my girlfriend always laughs at me because there's a little village near us called the Moy, and it's very busy on a Saturday night. And I said to her, you know, it's about identifying a gap in the market. And I identified, this is kind of funny and stupid, but I realised, you know, in the Moy, all those drunk people running about at 1:30 in the morning, and there's no food. There's no food for them. And like every other town, you know, has at least one takeout open, and everybody floods to it to get food, you know, after a night out. And you know, they're not the best places to be, especially if you're sober, because everybody's fucking mental in them. But I was like, what if I just went and bought like 20 loaves of Tesco bread, 30 packs of Tesco ham, and a big massive couple of kilos of butter, and I just made a ton of ham sandwiches, say like 200 ham sandwiches, and just sell them for like £4, and they probably cost you, between the packaging, the bread, the ham, the butter, less than £1 per sandwich. You know, that probably cost about, the packaging would probably cost more than the bread and the ham. You know, it would come 50, 60, 70p per sandwich, and you selling it £4. That's £3.30, say, per sandwich. And say you only sell 100 of them, £3.30, £33, £330. So there's $300 profit for, you could sell 100 sandwiches in 2 hours, an hour, whatever. And in theory, it's a great idea, you know. Those drunk people would flock to you if you had a bit of a sign and stuff like that. But then, drunk people, you know, that was why it was a stupid idea, because they're the most annoying people in the world. I fucking hate drunk people when I'm sober, you know. I've only ever seen myself drunk on a video, you know. I don't like myself either. You know, I don't think anybody likes themselves when they're drunk, but drunk people are annoying. We all know this. The odd time you get a funny drunk person, but you listen to them long enough, they'll become annoying because they just repeat themselves over and over and over and over. But this was my idea, and you know, my girlfriend was very quick to tell me that's fucking stupid, or not stupid, that's insane, it's a mental idea. You'll get beat up, you'll get robbed, you'll get tortured, you know, it'll be a nightmare. So I decided against the idea, but who knows, one day maybe I'll start a fucking sandwich shop in the middle of the Moy at 2 o'clock in the morning, who knows. But yeah, just little ideas like that there, you know, just finding something that could make a tiny amount of money. You don't need to make a big, you don't need to create a multi-million-dollar business in your head, you know. You just need to be able to pay, well, first of all, minimum wage. You need to be able to make minimum wage, and not just minimum wage, sorry, the minimum amount of money you need to survive, and a tiny bit more to either save or do fun stuff. But you know, you need to be able to take care of your rent, your heating, your electricity, your internet, your food. You know, if your side hustle turns into an actual business, you need to cater for tax as well and national insurance. And if it's a business that you're mainly promoting yourself online, you need to advertise a bit on Facebook. You know, it used to be that Facebook was great. When I started using Facebook, you know, you create a little page. I created a band page, and then you post stuff, and then everybody sees it, and it's great because you look like an official business because you created a page. But now, because there's so many pages on Facebook, or money grabbing money motherfuckers, you have to pay money if you want people to see your stuff. So like, I have like a band page for my music called Busker Man, and I think it has, I can't even remember, I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 followers. But I can put a post up and it tells you how many people have seen it, and it'll say 27 people have viewed this, 2 or 3 people have liked it. One of them's your mum, one of them's your dad, one of them's your partner or something like that, you know. So you need money if you're doing an online side hustle to pump into advertising. And if you're doing that, I'll talk about this next week, but your advertising is going to be like a fart in the wind if you don't do a bit of research on how to target the right people. But I'll do all that next week. We're coming up to the end. It's 55 minutes in. At the end here, I didn't get to talk about hypnosis, so I'll do that maybe next week as well. I'd just like to say at the end, I am not going to do every podcast like this, just me, because you'll get bored, I'll get bored, I'll run out of shit to say, I'll start talking crazy talk. So I want to start getting guests on the podcast. So if you're listening to this and you can think of anybody that would be good, either someone who has started a business from nothing, or has been a down and out in their life and built themselves back up, or somebody struggling with addiction and has gotten sobriety, you know, somebody ideally that's like more than a year or 2 sober, and those are sort of key areas I'm looking at, or anything else you might interest. Message me. I don't think I have an email address yet, but I will do for the next podcast. But my Facebook page is facebook.com/getthefingerout. My Instagram tag is Get the Finger Out, all one word, lower caps. Send me a PM or a DM or whatever on those things. And yeah, I'd like to have guests. I have a few people that I have in mind that I'm going to ask as well. And I'd just like to maybe have a guest podcast, you know, maybe once a month, something like that. I'll see how it goes. I'll see what people like, if I get any response from you. Please like the podcast. Please give it as many stars as you can, rating, a comment. If you think anybody would like this podcast, if anybody's into business or into building self-esteem or mental health or hypnosis or and addiction and trying to heal from addiction mainly, please, you know, share it, tell somebody, tell a friend, something like that there. So on that note, I'm going to go. I'm your host, Darryl, and this is Get the Finger Out podcast. Good luck. Have a good day.
I need to get this finger out of my hole. I've been walking the road too damn long. I'm a cripple and a riddle with doubt. I need to get the finger out.